Hello and welcome to the Middle School Bookmarker Show. I'm Chris.
And I'm Brianna. We're teachers reading this middle school novel for the very first time. We hope you'll read it along with us and then listen to our conversation about it.
This week we're covering Schooled by Gordon Korman, and we just read chapters 7 and 8, so if you haven't read those yet, go read them now.
Oh, and by the way, we're going to get this whole show wrapped up in just 11 minutes because 11 minutes is all you need to
go to the store to buy duct tape because you broke your finger, crashed your car, and ran out of diapers.
So these chapters were interesting because we went back to some point of views we've seen before. So we're getting some new point of views, we're getting some repeat ones. And our first repeat chapter was actually Mrs. Donnelly. And she is meeting Mr. Kasigi, the assistant principal, to find out how Capricorn is doing in school.
And we find out that academically, he's excelling. We get a little bit of insight about Ms. Donnelly's experience at Garland when she was a kid, because we find out that Rain was a really good teacher at Garland. She's been a really good teacher to Capricorn also. And there's a part mentioned in there about how even though she's kind of like a hippie and kind of like a loving, caring personality, when she was in the classroom, she was like a dragon. She was, you gotta do what I say all the time. So that was some interesting past that we learned about those two characters.
Yeah, I think Mrs. Donnelly referred to Rain in the classroom as a tyrant.
That's what it was,
tyrant. And said that she would have been like a good drill sergeant. And I was like, wow, from what I've seen of Rain so far, that does not fit.
Certainly not, no.
Personality. So I'm really curious to see if that kind of persona comes up again with Rain, and see how it differs with how she is with Capricorn.
We find out Cap is doing great academically, but socially, not so much. In this conversation, it's revealed that Kasigi keeps getting all these requests about the middle school bullfighting team, and Kasigi can't, the assistant principal, Kasigi, he can't believe that Cap doesn't understand that middle school is not something that you normally do. He's like, how could this kid possibly not understand that bullfighting isn't a middle school sport?
He asked Mrs. Donnelly, like, how does Capricorn not know this? Have you met any other kids from this commune? Have you dealt with them? And Mrs. Donnelly expresses that she's dealt with one other kid, and it was herself, but she doesn't share that with the assistant principal. She just says that, yeah, I dealt with a kid, and it was a difficult adjustment as well. So she's trying to say, yeah, it's a problem, but she also doesn't want to out herself as being a part of the commune when she was a kid.
She also finds out in this conversation that Cap has been elected president, and she's really confused. And she gets home and she asks her daughter, Sophie, about how could this possibly be that this Capricorn kid that just got to the school and doesn't really fit in, how could he be president? And Ms. Donnelly finds out that for years, since Sophie was in school, maybe before that, or when Sophie was in 8th grade, that it's a prank. They just kind of pick somebody that they know they want to make fun of all year, and they make that person the class president. And this year, it's Capricorn.
And Mrs. Donnelly almost is astonished by this revelation. She can't believe that Sophie would have been a part of this. And she asks her daughter, were you a part of this? Did you help with this? And Sophie's response is, of course, Mom. If you didn't, then it was as good as being the next nomination yourself.
Mm-hmm. I got the exact quote right here. At least we did not. Everybody participated, she retorted. At least we did nothing to stop it. If you don't go along with the gag, you're next. So that really stuck out to me. And Brianna, you made a great point before the episode started about how that kind of reminds you of mob mentality.
Mm-hmm.
So mob mentality is when you're in a group of people and you begin to think and act more negatively than you would just by yourself. If Sophie was by herself, then she might not have been somebody that participates in that cruel prank of nominating somebody to be president. But because she was with everybody else and didn't want to stand out, didn't want to become a target herself, well, she joined in. She joined in with them. Brianna, do you remember my favorite real life example of mob mentality? It involves a grandma.
That involves a grandma?
Ooh, I got something good then. So I teach a story that has mob mentality usually, and my favorite way to explain it is relating to Black Friday and how there might be a sweet old grandmother who's outside the doors of a Black Friday super sale. People are rearing to get inside, but everybody's pretty calm outside. Nice, sweet old lady, grandma, outside of the Walmart or whatever store it is. Well, when mob mentality kicks in, that's when those videos you see from Black Friday morning where all of a sudden people are charging into the stores, grabbing televisions, grabbing things on sale. They're all experiencing mob mentality. So that grandma, who might have just been baking cookies, she might have been super sweet, taking care of her grandkids, she would never by herself act that way. But when mob mentality kicks in, when they're in that group of people, she's all of a sudden doing stuff she never would have done. She's ripping TVs out of people's hands. She's throwing elbows. She's running people over with her cart. She's experiencing mob mentality. By herself, she would not have done those things, but in the group, she is.
I think another great example and a way to explain this using a different phrase is peer pressure. So in this specific situation, all the kids in the school feel like they have to participate in it or they're not going to be looked upon as cool because they'll be looked upon as the lame kid who could have been class president.
A lot of peer pressure here. And a lot of students that are kind of exerting that peer pressure, using their like popularity to exert that pressure on other kids.
Absolutely.
We're a little bit. We gotta move. We got about 5 minutes. We gotta finish this chapter and get the next one. So let's mow through the rest of this chapter.
So, rest of that chapter, brief summary. We talk to Sophie, and we find out from Mrs. Donnelly that Sophie actually has a lot of issues with her father. He makes a lot of promises that he can't keep, and recently he made a promise to give her driving lessons, and he didn't show up. And Mrs. Donnelly says to Capricorn that it really hurts Sophie, even if she doesn't say it outright.
So Sophie's being really mean to Cap. Cap doesn't really understand it. Miss Donnelly doesn't even really understand it. It's probably because Sophie's really upset about the issue she's having with her dad, and it's kind of just manifesting as being meanness towards Capricorn.
Yeah, and so, Capricorn is just trying to understand. And so as we go into Capricorn's chapter, we find out that he is just trying to understand, how he can talk to Sophie without making her more upset, because every time she sees him, she's just really upset.
This is more at the end of the chapter, but it's on his mind for the entire end of the chapter. He actually asks Mrs. Donnelly some advice at some point. Was that at the end?
I think it was towards the end, yeah.
Or maybe that was I forget, at some point in these two chapters. And that's when the dad stuff is revealed. And I bet that Cap, because he's a pretty sensitive character, he's probably going to use that information in some way to probably strengthen his relationship with Sophie and maybe even help make her feel better.
I absolutely agree. I think that there is going to be something with Sophie that we see change in one of the upcoming chapters.
Mm-hmm. Now would be a good time to tell you guys the secret word is Halloween. It's also a good time to talk about some English class stuff. So the thing we picked this week was a vocab word, consolation. Consolation means to comfort someone after they've lost or after they've experienced a disappointment. I think the most common time you hear consolation is actually related to game shows. You'll hear second place gets the consolation prize. Hey, you didn't win the actual main prize, the really good one, so here's a smaller consolation prize to make you feel a little bit better.
Mm-hmm. And another example is when somebody's really upset and you're trying to comfort them, you're consoling them, you're trying to make them feel better.
So we got Cap complaining, and we hear an inner monologue about him, how he's saying he's so confused about the school because he's getting lost all the time. Part of the time he's getting lost, it's legitimately because it's a very scary, new, giant school, and he's never had to navigate anything like it. The other part is because kids are intentionally giving him bad directions all the time. Zach Powers has kind of coordinated this little plan to just mess with him all the time. So Capricorn is constantly confused about where he is, what's going on, and he's even getting bad advice from people.
Right, and so he's trying to stand up to Zach and telling Zach, I can't ask about bullfighting anymore. So really the only positive thing that's happening to Capricorn in school is that he has a friend in Hugh Winkleman. Everything else is not going so well for him.
And speaking of Zach, there's one quick thing I wanted to ask you about. We have very little time. So Cap stands up to Hugh. Hugh turns around and Cap sees Hugh like shaking or something. I wasn't clear if Zach was lying, or I'm sorry, Zach was laughing about Cap, or if he was like maybe a little bit like shaken because Cap stood up to him. I don't know. What do you think?
I think he's laughing. I just think from what I know of Zach, he is laughing at the fact that Capricorn is trying to stand up to him, but like still doesn't really know that much about the situation.
Cap's morally protesting. Zach probably thinks that's funny. I think that is probably the most likely thing. All right, we got a couple seconds left. I'm going to blast through the rest of this stuff. So Cap also has to plan an upcoming Halloween dance. He doesn't know what Halloween is. That should be crazy. He has that whole funny monologue about the bus floor and how it's like a representative of the worst parts of society. Pretty funny. I think that's it. Anything big that we missed, Brianna?
I don't think so. I think we hit on everything. So I want to thank everybody for listening. Be sure to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. And we will continue with chapters 9 and 10 next time.
We took 32 seconds more than we should have. I'm very sorry. We'll see you guys next time.